as you well know, he was never considered, I will say, a half-brother to our family. Earl and Merle was always brothers. In fact, Barbara was quite old, and in high school, if I am not going to be corrected, before she quite old, before she found out that Earl and Merle were half-brothers. Mom never made a difference between the family. Dad did. I'm an honest guy. But in my opinion, Dad made a difference. Mom never made a difference between any of us. There was 9 of us, not 8 of us, by the way. We have a little brother buried in Visalia, California, and his name is Nathaniel Lewis. He's very near our great-great-grandpa, which would be Papa's dad. And his name is Gilbert Pace. We don't have any Gilberts from their own, by the way. So he's buried just a short distance from the baby's grave in Visalia, California. If you're ever down there, take a minute. It's the oldest cemetery in town, which figures. And that's where he's buried, Grandpa Pace. Grandpa Pace, which would be Gilbert, my great-grandpa, is buried there. It has been since Farmersville. My first recollection of the Pace family being a kid was coming to California. Don't know what year it was, but I was born in 1938. So it was somewhere around before 1940 or somewhere in there. But I remember coming up Route 66 from Texas. We left Texas and during hard times, like a lot of people. Things ain't changed much, just the dollars. Still hard times, Tom. Never changed. We came, and I remember in the old car, there was me and Verlin, which Verlin is next number 4 from the top, or 5, I don't know, wherever, it's somewhere in that thing. And we come up Route 66, and I was quite small, but that one little bit I remember parking alongside the road in the desert, don't know where, and Dad pulled a tarp out from the car, and he must have hooked it on a bush. And I remember he took out the back seat, and somebody laid on the back seat, and I don't know where the rest of us slept, but there would have been Merle, Earl, me, and Verlin. Frankie was not born yet. I was born in Clovis, New Mexico, and Verlin was born in Clovis, New Mexico, which was near Littlefield, Texas. If you look at a tag, you'll see that was the nearest hospital. I don't remember the hospital, by the way. And so that's where we were born. And my dad was a person, and Shirley Pace Husted has my mother's diary that reflects that time zone. And Dad, in his early ages, or early marriage to my mom, his first mom died, as you know, when the boys were 6 and 8, or 4 and 6. 4 and 6. And so Mom inherited 2 boys early on in life. Dad followed the wheat harvest with the mules and that kind of thing, no power equipment. And so if you read the diary that Shirley has, you'll see that he was home very much because he followed the harvest. And one thing once in a while he said, Marvin lost his job again. He didn't lose it. There wasn't no more wheat, so he went to the next farm. But coming to California was a challenge. Our first landing in California was in Farmersville, California. And we lived in the government camp. And if you don't know what that was, it's like the Japanese internment camps that you see now on television. All 10, no wood. 10 sides, 10 roof. That was it, no walls. And I remember we were there, when we got there, Papa and Mama lived in the good house, like the caretaker's house. It had walls and windows and that. And we didn't have that. In that old tent, I remember, was a big old coil stove. And that was our heat in the summertime. And we were there maybe a year or so. I don't know. You open up the side of that metal tent, that was your air conditioner. But we didn't know any better. That was the way that we'd always lived. And we left Farmersville. I remember Mom, before we left the government camp, and moved in town, as it were, to a house near Grandpa and Grandma Pace, or Papa and Mama, as you know them. And we moved there, And I remember, I don't know between point A and point B, but I remember my mom throwing the chicken nest out of the chicken house and sweeping the cobwebs off the wall and sweeping the floor. And that's what we lived in for a short period of time. Didn't know any better. Finally, we did get a house that had tar paper on the side. And I remember we had a kerosene lamp back then. Mama washed her clothes in a big old black kettle thing, throwed wood on it, took lye soap, and that was part of life. Nobody did know any different. But the funny thing about that, I don't remember Merle and Earl all of this time. No memory of them at all. Now, whether they went with Dad or not to work and I wasn't old enough, I don't know. Of course, Shirley wasn't born yet. She hadn't come along. My dad was a farmer at heart, amongst other things, and as he progressed, he raised things that didn't make sense. I remember one year he raised turnips, and I remember we had to pull the turnips and throw them on the wagon with the mules, and he took them to town. In Farmersville. Frankie, where's Frankie at? Okay. Frankie was about 3 years old, or 2 or 3 years old, probably 3 years old, when he used to go in and around amongst the mules. Them old mules didn't pay no attention to him, except that one day Frankie got behind that one old mule, that old brown, and he kicked him in the head. And that's why Frankie's like he is today, a little bit short on looks, but he's got a good mind.
He's got a big heart too.
Pardon?
He's got a big heart too.
Yeah, and a big heart. Frankie's got, but that's where Frankie got injured. You think they took him to the doctor in those days? Not in your tent. We went from that place, that's where we learned to swim, by the way, in Farmersville, in that creek. Frankie fell in the creek one time, and I told Verlin to get him out. And Verlin was going to take his clothes off and jump in. He did it. He ain't got time, he's drowning. So I jumped in, clothes and all, drug Frankie out. We never got to go fishing. We never got to go swimming down there again. And Mom found out about it. But all in all, the Pace family's tripped around. The girls, my sisters, can tell you more about the goings of the Pace family because I left home at an early age and I don't remember much of that. But I do not remember Merle and Earl growing up. If I had brothers, I don't remember. It was always me and Verlin, and that was about it. And later on, Frankie come along, and Verlin and Frankie, and I always got the back porch of the house. I always had my own bedroom. Always. Merle and Earl had a room. Verlin and Frankie had a room. I got my room to myself. I don't know what that was all about. But they traipsed around. Merle told me many years ago, that one year, and I don't know what I would have been small, they moved 13 times. So that was a good time for me. So I'm going to let the girls pick up when we got to Delhi. Shirley, where you at?
Here.